Mr. Hagel says the trip is focused on assessing the country as the U.S. begins the drawdown of its forces in the new year. He also said he'll meet with the new Afghan president during the trip. A very dangerous, slow-moving typhoon Hagupit is lashing the Philippines this hour. It's hitting the country with rain and roaring winds and posing a major threat of flash floods and landslides. Hagupit is expected to make landfall on Samar Island a few hours from now. Well, Derek Van Dam is tracking the storm at the International Weather Center, and he joins us now. Derek, we just spoke to Andrew Stevens there in Tacloban, and we could already see that rain coming down. Explain for our viewers what you're seeing from the model.
Well, Andrew should actually be experiencing stronger wind gusts over the next 3 hours, so he'll want to be prepared for that. Nonetheless, you can see Tacloban right to the south here, the eye wall of this particular storm, just about, well, let's say roughly 5 hours from making landfall on Samar Island. That is in the eastern Philippines. You can see Legazpi just to the north. We're going to talk about all of these locations in detail in just one moment, but you can see that the storm has weakened somewhat, and it's also picked up forward momentum, which means that we have a slightly earlier landfall time, roughly around 9 p.m. local time across the eastern portions of this particular island. Pagasa has extended its Signal 3 public warning signal into the southern Luzon Islands, including Legazpi and all of Samar. You can see a Signal 2 where our Andrew Stevens is located in Tacloban. This is the latest radar coming out of the region. We have two separate radars, one to the north, one to the south, and Tacloban is actually located across this area, so you can see the rain bands just starting to lash that region, and the stronger winds will pick up. But I want you to take note of this city here on the east-facing side of Samar Island. This is Borongan, and we've got some visuals coming out of there shot about 4 hours ago. What I want to pay attention to and take note of is that there are still people on the coast, a very precarious position to be, considering that the eye wall is getting closer and closer to this particular island. Not a place you want to be at the moment, so hopefully they've heard the warnings and they are getting to safety and higher ground. Let's get back to the graphics and talk about our concerns going forward. This is called the path of uncertainty. Anyone underneath this shading of blue, anywhere from Legazpi all the way to Manila, we want to pay very close attention to the track of the storm. We are expecting it to impact southern Luzon, including Manila, by late Sunday evening into Monday, the start of the work week. It will be a weakened typhoon, but still a force to be reckoned with. The rainfall will be the major concern for that region, potentially some localized urban flooding. Kind of an interesting graphic here. You can see that some of the outer typhoon force winds now starting to reach the east coast, but again, the eye wall still well offshore. Let's talk about the concerns over this region, and coastal storm surge is our major concern, especially for the east-facing islands, and that includes Legazpi. Specifically, we have all the little inlets and bays that we want to be paying close attention to as this finally makes landfall. It's going to have a compounding effect with the strong winds pushing up the ocean. It is coinciding, by the way, Aisha, with a full moon and high tide, which is not great news. By the way, rainfall totals exceeding 400 millimeters in some locations.
Those are incredible numbers we see there.
It really is.
On that picture. We shall follow this closely. Derek, appreciate it. Thank you. Well, millions of people have fled their homes in the Philippines to get out of the path of Typhoon Hagupit. But less than a day before the storm makes landfall, many people living in one threatened area still had not evacuated. Miguel Ortega gives us the view from Borongan a few hours ago.
In less than 24 hours, the strongest typhoon this year will hit this region. It will be coming from the Pacific Ocean, and as you can see, it's far from calm. Very frightening. The waves are getting higher and higher. It was last year when a storm surge also hit central Philippines, and we're now here in Borongan, eastern Samar, and as Typhoon Hagupit is set to batter this part of the central Philippines anytime within the next 24 hours, many have already evacuated their homes in fear of what the government reports of a 3 to 4 meter storm surge that may come with a typhoon. Now, the problem is there are still many people staying in these villages. this. On this side, several meters from the ocean, you see that there are still people, still houses, and not many of them have evacuated. And what the government wants to do is to make sure that within the day, before nighttime, everyone in harm's way, everyone in critical areas will be taken into higher ground. But we'll still have to see if they can manage to do that given such limited time.
Miguel here reporting there from Borangan, where there's still apparent scenes of calm even though the storm is approaching. We'll follow the situation there for you. Well, Typhoon Hagupit is passing north of Tacloban, which is devastated last year by Typhoon Haiyan. Although it appears to be escaping a direct hit this time, Tacloban is being pelted with rain and conditions are still expected to be dangerous. Pamela Boykov has more.
Clutching her one-month-old son, Christina Hilaria remembers the moment 1 year ago that Typhoon Haiyan trapped her in her home.
We were trapped. We ran to hide somewhere, so we will be safe. We were very afraid at that time because we don't know that there is a storm surge.
Christine and her sister won't make the same mistake this time. With Typhoon Hagupit bearing down on Tacloban, they are headed to a local hotel, better built than their home. They know they may lose the house that took 6 months to rebuild, but better to lose a home and to keep their lives. More than 6,000 perished when Typhoon Haiyan made its deadly sweep across this part of the Philippines last year. The memory of that storm drove tens of thousands from their homes. More than 20,000 poured into evacuation centers across the city. Schools, gymnasiums, and churches turned into cramped, noisy safe havens.
They didn't take chances. Many of them decided to evacuate even before we asked them to evacuate.
All around, signs of a city preparing for the worst. A hospital boards up its windows. Drivers stock up on fuel. The Army, accused of having a late response to the last storm, stands at the ready. In San Jose, the neighborhood hardest hit by Haiyan, a lone surfer takes advantage of the growing waves, but no one else is taking pleasure in the approaching storm. Nearly everyone we spoke to said they plan to evacuate, but not Ramil Orania. He's staying behind to protect his house from looters. If the water starts to rise like last time, he'll run, but he's very scared.
Lahat naman kami dito.
I pray the storm will just disappear, he says. Not to hit another place, but just disappear. It's a prayer likely shared across this community where they know all too well how much grief a storm can bring. Pamela Boykov, CNN, Tacloban, the Philippines.
We'll stay with CNN for continuing coverage of Typhoon Hagupit. Turning to the United States now, protesters fill the streets of major U.S. cities for a third night, demanding police reform.